This podcast is about one topic: infertility and guilt.
Welcome back to the Infertility Feelings Podcast, your place to process, cry, and laugh about infertility. We are so happy to have you here, and we really hope you enjoy today's conversation.
Why do we feel guilty during infertility? Infertility is something that happens to us. It's a disease that happens to us, yet we feel guilty about how we got there. We feel guilty throughout it. Yet it's something that is outside of our control and it's happening to us. Do you ever feel guilty during infertility?
So backwards.
Yeah.
But we all do it. We all do it. And we hear it in our process groups all the time, constantly. I think it's because infertility, you feel so out of control that you try to control, and then you judge yourself that it didn't work, or you should have done this, or you should have done that, or you should have done this. And for me, a lot of that went to guilt, just because that's something that I've struggled with my entire life. So infertility was a guilt gift.
The old guilt gift. Yep.
It was the gift that was like, okay, you've struggled with this your whole life and you've kind of had it like under control your kind of whole life, and you talk about it and you work through it or whatever. But now I'm going to give you a gift where something that you can't control, and you're just going to judge yourself on how you're going to do it.
Yeah, it's
and
horrible.
It's like mine just went to guilt and shame that it was my fault. If I can be honest, us both having a diagnosis of you having low sperm count and me having low ovarian reserve helped with my guilt, if I can be honest. Because I think if it was just me, which I know a lot of people, that's the diagnosis is just yours. I don't want to say that it's their fault. It's just the diagnosis is yours. I could see that would be really, really, really difficult to not feel guilty that you did something, even though you didn't. You had no control, but that it's your fault. And I think that in a weird way, I felt relief when you got a diagnosis too, because it helped me with my guilt and shame. Like, okay, it's not just me.
Okay, let's get into this topic, because why do we feel guilty? That's, I think, my first question is, people can be diagnosed with infertility and they feel bad about it. They feel like, oh no, I am not able to give my parents a grandchild, or I'm not able to give my spouse this child, or I'm not able to do this thing and be part of the mom club or something like that. We feel guilty for being in the position of struggling with infertility. What? That's so bizarre to me. Logically, maybe I would say it doesn't make sense, because why would you feel guilty? Nothing. You didn't choose this.
You didn't do anything wrong.
You could feel like, of course, sad, angry, bitter, like disappointed, massively disappointed,
anxious, depressed.
And I think this thought comes from, you'll post things on Instagram sometimes of like, well, when we had an Instagram, it's still coming back, people. Don't worry.
Jeez. It's been a month.
It's been a month. No, I'm not stressed. You're stressed. I'm not stressed. You're stressed.
What happened to me the other day? My eye started twitching again. I was like, oh no, that hasn't happened since 2020. And my eye is just like,
but you'll post something about, if you're feeling guilty, like there's grace for you. And it makes me think, like, I wonder if people who aren't struggling with infertility or are outside of this world look and go, why would someone feel guilty for having infertility? They didn't choose that, or that's not, like, why would you feel, I could see why you'd feel horrible and disappointed, but guilty, why would you feel guilty? You didn't choose this, or you didn't do anything to cause this. Yet it's true. I felt guilty. You've felt guilty. What about it makes us feel like we're struggling with that guilt just by being infertile?
I don't know sometimes, honestly.
Yeah.
I think that because it is so true when you almost like look at it above, like big picture, it's like, oh, that person shouldn't feel guilty. They didn't do anything wrong. But when you look at it in small picture and you daily live with it, and a doctor and kind of sometimes words that can happen in clinics or our culture, or, just being told to relax, just being told to have wine, just being told to all this, that it makes you feel like it's your fault. So when it doesn't work, you feel guilty, like you did something wrong.
Maybe that's it. Maybe that.
Just thought of it on the fly.
Oh my gosh, you're so brilliant. But what if fertility, not infertility, what if fertility is such a given in our minds that it's like, well, of course you can do this. Of course you'll be able to have a baby whenever you want. And then when you struggle to have a baby, when you struggle with infertility, you almost feel like, I should be able to do this. How come I can't? How
Well,
come the universe is not letting this happen?
I would say culturally we feel that. I think in our church communities, our faith communities, we can feel that. Like I felt that of like, it is your job as a woman to bear children. We've talked about that on the church podcast a lot. But like, so I think I came to wanting to have children, and it was like, this is my job. This is what my body was meant to do. Everyone says that just relax and you'll get pregnant. So it's like, there's just all these messages that it's you. And I think especially for a woman, that it's you, that you have control over this somehow. When it's like, we have no control of our body parts. We got no control of our inside body parts. We have no control, zero control over how those things work. Yeah. So I think that it's overcoming the messages that we've heard maybe our whole lives and growing up, and the messages that you hear when you are struggling to conceive, like relax or have wine or go on vacation or whatever it is. It's like you are combating like, that's ignorance. It's not my fault. But then it trickles in to be like, yes, it is your fault. And I think that's where the guilt comes in. And guilt and shame for me makes me feel horrible.
Yeah, what does guilt and shame feel like for you? Like how does it display itself?
It makes me feel trapped in my head. It makes me feel like everyone's judging me. It makes me feel like you're judging me. It makes me feel I'm judging myself. It gives me into an anxiety spiral. Nothing gets me into an anxiety spiral like guilt and shame.
Yeah.
Like it really makes me feel bad. It like makes me feel the lowest of low.
Yeah. Does it change your outlook on life?
Yes.
Like in those moments?
Yes. It makes me feel, for me, I just get stuck in my head and I start guessing what people are thinking. They must think that I made a mistake too. And then for you must be thinking, I mean, on a catastrophic level, you wish you married someone else, or that, like that you're judging me of how I'm doing something or whatever. And it really makes me feel bad. It really makes me feel bad. I still struggle with it, of just even some of the choices that we made in our adoption journey and stuff like that. And just like, I just don't like to look at it. And I think that it's kind of like a symptom of my even daily life now of struggling with infertility. And there's other things that have made me feel guilt and shame, not just that, but that it's something I have to work on still, because I can very easily go back to, this is your fault. This is all your fault. Even though you had no control, this is all your fault.
Yeah.
Which is so funny.
And how active is that? Like, how active are you having to address that?
If I'm in a guilt and shame space, it's constant. It's constant.
That sounds exhausting.
It is exhausting. That's why I sleep real well at night. No, I'm just kidding. No,
okay, well, question about that. I think part of what brings up this feeling of guilt for us, and for me too, I had in ways felt guilty of like, oh my gosh, we're not able to do this. I'm not able to do this for you.
Maybe yours is like not provide or whatever that
maybe. I think whatever it is, like it could be provide, it could be have this life, it could be the person I want to be the future that I thought I was going to have. I think a lot of it comes back to living this ideal version of ourselves that we just assumed was going to happen when we were like 14. And I know you might think, well, we all had these fantasies when we were, growing up and 18 years old, 20 years old. I think we underestimate how powerful that is and how powerful those moments were for us. Being in high school, watching NSYNC, and thinking about your first dance at your wedding and being like, yes. And then watching a mom push a baby through a stroller, with a stroller, and thinking, I'm going to be like that. I'm going to go to the park. I'm going to go to Starbucks with my iced coffee. And like, we're going to do the Target thing. Like, I think that becomes the fabric of our very reality. And we just assume it's going to happen. We, in a way, know that it's going to happen. And we count on it. We look forward to it. So then when it doesn't happen, I think the guilt is that I'm not able to live up to this version of myself, this reality that I thought was going to be.
This ideal version of myself.
It's kind of feels like, oh, I've failed to achieve. I've failed to achieve this version of myself that I assumed to be true for so long. And then you start to feel guilty for not being able to achieve that version. Mm-hmm. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That I think is very powerful.
Yeah.
And whether you struggle with guilt or shame or not, that comes into play. It's this thing that we've all assumed, and when we don't get it, that disconnect is really powerful. It's not like, oh, I hope that I become a CEO of a company someday. I hope that I can get into the college of my dreams. Those are always like, I'm going to stretch myself and get this. It's, well, of course I'm going to have kids. Of course I'm going to be able to have a baby when I want to have a baby.
And infertility is not something that's talked about a lot. So you look around and it seems like everyone else is getting this goal.
Totally.
But they just looked at their husband or sneezed. That's my favorite. I sneezed and got pregnant. I was like, no one sneezes and gets pregnant.
I'm like, that's not correct.
Yeah. And also like, that's just weird to say. Like, no one is sneezing when that activity is happening. Okay. Like,
ew, gross. Yeah. Could
you know what I mean? But that's like something that's like, I almost want to stop people and be like, that's really weird.
You should be like, wait, are you serious?
Yeah. Is that all it takes? Sneezing? I should just have an allergy attack and then that will happen. No, but it's crazy.
So there's a disconnect from this reality that we wanted to live into and we're not living into it. So there's guilt of we weren't able to achieve it. But I think we should stop and also say that throughout going through infertility treatments and even the process of trying every month, there's a lot of opportunity for guilt. And we can speak directly to that. We've done the treatments. We've, done the months and months and months and years of trying. You start to feel guilty and beat yourself up for, I don't know, a million different things. What are some of the things that you felt guilty for? It could be like, I didn't eat perfectly this month. I didn't, do my shots the exact right time, or I didn't take all the supplements. There's probably something I didn't read. For you, what were the things that you started to beat yourself up for throughout the process?
I feel like for me, it was more internal. I feel like you are more external. Like, I will do the shots perfectly. I will take the pills, make sure Jesse is like on it with that kind of stuff. So I almost didn't feel like in our dynamic, I had to own a lot of that kind of stuff.
Right.
And even in adoption, I feel like you were like, I'm going to make the phone calls. I'm going to do this. Mine was all internal. I was hopeful, but I wasn't hopeful enough. But then I was too hopeful. And then I was whatever. And then I wasn't in the greatest space, like mentally, or I wasn't like physically at peace, or I had a little bit of anxiety, or I was trying not to be stressed. Like, mine was all internal. And then I would be like, it wouldn't work. And I'd be like, it was because you were too stressed. It's your fault. It's your fault. And so mine was a internal game with myself of like, it really felt like how, because they say like, don't be stressed. And you're like, okay. Like, I'll really try not to be stressed in a really stressful situation. So I feel like mine was a lot internal and a lot of just battling against myself, that I had to somehow, like, my mental state affected my womb.
That's a really good observation. I feel like yours was not as much physical in the physical world of doing stuff. It was more
because
is my attitude, is my approach, is my emotional connection to this correct?
Yes.
Am I hoping enough? Am I positive enough? Am I mourning enough? Or
all
of the way that you were facing it emotionally gave you the most guilt,
and
maybe.
God bless the A-types because you were A-type, I didn't have to kind of worry about that kind of stuff, which I feel like that is more you, of like where you got guilt and shame of like, oh, did I do it well? Did I do the shots right? Did I, and I feel like for you it was like, was I there for her enough? Like all that kind of stuff. But me, it was just all internal. I was just fighting against up here. And I think really the driver of my guilt, and I feel like in the front seat, if you will, of the guilt was, this is all your fault. This is your fault.
And why did you think that?
I don't want to I don't know, just the way that our culture was set up. And I think growing up also for me in the church, and I think how I envisioned our family being. I think I envisioned our family being having 3 to 4 kids and them all starting with the letter J, or, you know what I mean? It's dumb things that you think when you're 12, but I think there was just a lot of opportunity. There was just a lot of opportunity to feel like I've disappointed, like the church has been giving me this message, and now I'm like somehow disappointed or less than in the church because I can't provide for Doug or whatever the hell that means. And then culturally of like, this is your fault. This is what we do. Like, this is how you maintain your friendships, is like, you have to become a mom because then you'll lose all your friends if you don't. Like all those things, guilt, my fault, guilt. And then with us, it was like, are we going to be okay? Like, I feel like it's my fault somehow. And I don't know if it was just a training. It was just a training of my brain of kind of how I think. It's just like, something went wrong. It must be your fault. And so,
Yeah,
and
it's
the
just
fault,
in there. It's in there somewhere. It's all kind of connected to everything, maybe.
yeah. But I think the driving force for me is that it's my fault. And so that's where the guilt is of like, it's your fault, so you should feel guilty and you should feel shame on how you've experienced this or you did this wrong somehow. And that's just hard. And I feel like I'm being judged. I feel like guilt is a lot of like judgment too. Like someone is judging me. Doug is judging me. The community is judging me. The church is judging me. Like God's judging me, like on how I'm doing this. And I feel like that's kind of the message that I felt of just like, this is your fault. And people are judging you for it. There's nothing like feeling like it is your fault and that people are judging you for it. And then you take one little line that somebody says that someone like, or hits you on the wrong day, or you get your 800th, just have a glass of wine. And it's like, that's just like the tipping point to be like, because I'm trying so hard to combat myself with these comments of like ignorance. And then there's just one that's just like, it just breaks you to be like, yep, it is my fault. I should have had the glass of wine. I should have had 5. I should have had, or I shouldn't have had any at all. Like it's just, and then I think it's just unique to feel like this is my fault. I feel guilty about it. And then it's confirmed because I think everyone is judging and agreeing with me. That's what I think. They're agreeing with me that it is my fault. Sad. I could cry. It's just sad. It's sad.
Yeah. What makes it so sad?
Because it's already hard enough to deal with this kind of crap. To deal with infertility, it's already hard enough. And then you have to like control your mental state and like, yeah, it's just physically, spiritually, emotionally, it's already hard enough. And then you have to like, and then you beat yourself up for it and you feel like it's your fault. It's like, oh, I wish I could just take that away from people. That they didn't have that added extra feeling to have to feel, because guilt is just a nasty beach and it can make you feel worse already when you feel so bad, you know? And it's personal, something I struggle with in general.
Yeah, it's something so personal too. You know, it's if you already struggle with guilt and shame,
guilt over my body, all that. Ugh, it's hard.
You go through something like this, it's just insult to injury. And then the fact that infertility is so personal, it has to do with what you want in life, children, parenthood, your body, like certain parts of your body that are very like private and
right.
I don't know, vulnerable, and like it just feels like not something you want to talk about. And then you're beating yourself up for it, getting stupid comments. It's just
I wish I could take away infertility in general, period, and give everyone, or have the ability to like anyone that wants to become a parent, that can happen when they want to. But I know that that's not possible. But I think I would get rid of, if I could get rid of one thing in infertility of how we experience, I don't know, maybe this is dumb to say, but because there's no comparison, because everyone's different too. But for me, I think I would want to take away that it was my fault, that I just thought that it was my fault. And it's just that guilt and shame, because I feel like it made me experience my infertility even worse, because I just had that I was trying to combat that all the time. And I wish I could have take that out and take that away. What's it like for you to experience someone that struggles with guilt and shame?
That's a good question. I think I feel bad and I want to take it away. I want to plan so perfectly that you never have to experience anything that would make you feel guilt or shame. Like I just want to get it over with, get pregnant, be done with this, do the adoption, do the thing, be done, so that you can stop living in this hard, miserable world.
Yeah. How'd that work out?
Not great, to be honest. Not great. That's the hard part, is when it doesn't work. That's where the guilt comes from.
Yeah.
Is I didn't plan correctly. Now I feel like crap because you feel like crap. So I feel like crap. There's a movie coming out called Napoleon, about Napoleon, who's the French emperor, Napoleon
This
Bonaparte.
is not where I thought this was going to go, but yes.
I'd like to talk for a while about Napoleon. No, just, I mean, it's stupid. I watched a preview yesterday or something like that, and a couple days ago, and in it, Napoleon says this thing. He's like, I'll be the first to admit when I've made a mistake. I just simply don't ever make a mistake. And that is how there's something that like lights up inside of me, because I'm like, hell yeah. I don't know. I just love that.
Yeah.
Like, I'm the first to admit when I've made a mistake or planned incorrectly. I just don't ever plan incorrectly. And maybe it's dark and twisted, or maybe it's my personality. We've talked about this a ton on the podcast. Something about that I just love. Infertility is the worst when it comes to that, because I planned correctly and it didn't work, and I even tried to plan your experience correctly and
cater your experience
and make it, something that was difficult but positive. And I just couldn't protect you from the guilt. I couldn't protect you from the failure.
Yeah.
And when I saw you
spiral,
when I saw you spiral, when I saw you beating yourself up for, things that happened, or becoming too hopeful or feeling bad about it, I just felt like I failed. I failed to make this right. I failed to get through this correctly. And I felt so guilty, just like, oh, I'm putting you through this in a way. So for me, the guilt is all very much so in the real world. It's in the tangible things. It's in the doctor's appointments, in the shots, in the medicine, and the cost. And how can I minimize those things and make it be something that's not like this? And that's where the guilt comes from. And it's hard. Like you said, I don't necessarily struggle with guilt and shame. There's other things that I struggle with.
Anxiety being number one.
Namely anxiety being number one. I'm just a more anxious person. I'm not a very guilt-ridden person. Like if something doesn't go right, I'm like, it more makes me anxious about the future.
Yeah.
How do I do it better next time?
Right.
I don't sit and feel like beat myself up and go low like that. I more get high strung.
Right.
I don't go low, I go high.
And I go low. You go high, I go low. And you can just see the soup that probably makes in our daily lives sometimes. The emotional soup.
Totally. And if you're listening to this, that's probably the problem, is that as a couple, if you're going through this as a couple, or even if you're going through this by yourself and you have people who are trying to, give you life throughout this whole thing, everyone deals with it differently. Mm-hmm. You might go low and you might just drain you to your core and make you feel like I got nothing left and I'm depressed. Or it might make you just get incredibly anxious and hyperactive and want to control everything. Mm-hmm. And usually we're together with someone who's the exact opposite.
Yeah, usually.
And we're missing each other. So I think that's the hard part, is how do you overcome that? How do you address those feelings of guilt in a way that feels successful? And then this is our question on this podcast. And really the whole goal of this podcast is to address the fact that, yes, we do feel guilty. And almost to unburden yourself that if you're like, am I the only one who feels guilty about all of this?
Please. I got t-shirts. Like, you're good. You are okay. You are okay. If you are experiencing guilt and shame and all that, you are not alone. Like, hear me loud and clear. You are not alone.
Yeah.
Like, there is so many people that feel that way. I feel that way. I still can feel that way looking back. Like, you are not alone. You are not crazy. You are experiencing this normally.
And chances are you're doing everything to make this work.
Yes.
You're not part of the problem. You're part of the solution.
Oh, here we go. Are you running for senator? That was so senatory.
You are not the problem. But it's true, though. We've sometimes, I think, put ourselves in the position of, I am the problem. I'm the one who's, not making this work. So I feel guilty about that. Right. You're part of the solution. You're doing everything you possibly can to make this work. It's infertility's fault. It's not your fault.
Yeah.
I mean, we say that all the time.
And I don't want people to hear the solution of like, so you're going to fix it by being perfect and being the solution. No. It's just that it's just not your fault. I think that's just it. It's just like, period. It's just not your fault. Like, you're doing everything you can to make this work. It's interesting. As you were talking, I was trying to think about what I was going to say to like combat the guilt that I feel all the time. It's just my go-to. That's what I would say. It's just my go-to. If I'm going to go somewhere emotionally, it's going to be guilt and shame. Must be my fault. But some of the hardest guilt and shames that I've ever felt, and this guy could cry again, but try to keep it together, even though it's okay to cry, is the most beautiful connection actually has come out of it for me and you, especially when I've gone down that dark path and I'm feeling really guilt and shame and I am feeling like it's all my fault, to be able to say it out loud to you and for you to combat it is like the sweetest thing. So not that I wish I feel guilt and shame for the sweetness that has come out of it or whatever, but it really is like amazing when I call out my guilt and shame and say it to someone, or say it to you, or say it to someone that I feel like I've wronged or whatever. It's like how I am met, if someone is safe, how I am met really does instantly make it feel better. Instantly. And I feel like with anxiety or stuff like that, I don't feel like stuff I say instantly makes you feel better. I feel like anything I say makes it feel worse. Because, it's like anxiety is your own like kind of physical and all that kind of stuff. I mean, I think it helps. Absolutely. Like, I don't think I'm like, I think that's a way that you can get help, is telling people and whatever. But I think there's something really magical and beautiful about when you tell someone that you're feeling guilty and what you're actually feeling and what you're actually, the script that's going on in your mind. I've never had anything like it to tell you, Doug, I feel guilty that I couldn't bear you a child or whatever that means. And for you to be like, I don't view you like that at all. It really does, for me, instantly make me feel better. And I just don't think there's a lot of things like that emotionally. And I think that would be my thought to people. And that's what I do and I try to practice in my life, is telling someone that script that's going on in your head. And hopefully they can meet you and say that it's not your fault and you're doing everything you can. And I see you trying so hard. And it really does instantly make me feel better. I don't know if that's been a whiplash for you, because it's like I can be really, really, really down and then whiplash really instantly to be like, I actually feel a lot better and a lot lighter.
Yeah. No, I think that's the number one way to replace guilt with grace.
Yeah.
Is like, how do we feel like we're getting grace, have grace on ourselves, we're getting grace from people when we only have guilt? I think we have to bring other people into it. That's the number one thing that I think has worked in our life, and I think is proven to work psychologically, is we have to bring someone into our own mental space.
And I know we say that all the time, but for someone that really, really struggles with this kind of stuff, I have seen that it is one of the only things that can help.
Right.
Of course, like maybe working out or whatever, things like that. Like, like working on your own mental health.
Guilt is a weird one, though.
Guilt is a unique one, I say. Because I know we say to tell people how you're feeling all the time, but I feel like I'm like, no, really. But with this one, like, it is the only antidote.
Okay, let me get a little weird here for a second.
It's the only antidote.
Let me get weird. Guilt is very deep in us. It's not a directly connected to physical expression of emotion, if that makes sense. Guilt is weird. It's it's a thought about a thought. It's a thought about the way things were. It's a disappointment about a thought that you had a thought that you had a thought. Like it goes deep, and this is why I said I don't want to go too philosophical, but I've been known to go there.
But here I go.
It's so, I'm trying to find the right word that would make sense to everyone. It's so mental, if that makes sense. It's not like, my heart rate is up because I'm anxious. How do I do some breathing treatments to calm myself down? That would be great.
I'm really depressed. I need to go see sunshine. I need to go outside.
Yes.
I need to do activities that I love. It's and tell people, of course, but
guilt is almost relational. It's a relational stance towards yourself and what you think other people are towards you. The only way you're going to get really down into where guilt is through other people. I think and that's why we say this one is specifically, so you so much so need other people. Is guilt, the type of thing that guilt is, can really only be addressed by sharing with someone else what your relational stance is towards yourself about a topic, and confirming with them if they have that same stance towards you, or if they think that stance towards you is accurate. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Like bringing to someone and saying I feel like I'm just beating myself up and I feel so guilty for the way we did this last month, this last cycle. Last transfer. I feel like I didn't do enough. And I'm relating to that fact, that information, in a way that's making me feel horrible. And then maybe that person can go, what? We did everything. How could, no, there's no way. I feel like you did wonderful. And I feel like you did more than enough. I'm so sorry. I don't judge you at all. I don't think you should feel like you did anything wrong. That's the only way to get to that relational connection that we're making through guilt. So I think that's the answer. How do you replace guilt with grace? I think you have to bring other people in to confirm or deny the way that you're relating to yourself. And 10 times out of 10, 100% of the time, we probably in infertility are going so overboard that we've done more than enough.
Yes.
But it's hard to convince ourselves. So we just need one more person. You know, you tell someone and they're like, no, oh my gosh, you're absolutely amazing. You've done so much. And you're like, thanks. That helps a little bit. You know, for you, it might be like, okay, one person, I feel a lot better. But then if it's like, I still don't feel that way, maybe one more, and just keep going until you see reality.
Yeah. It's almost like guilt is like untouchable. It's like untouchable. It's like, it's not like anxiety. It's not like depression. It's not like all these other things where it's almost like physical symptoms you can see. And for me, looking at the sun and feeling the sunlight is not going to make me feel less guilty.
Right.
But going to you, and I think one thing that you said that I felt like was from someone who is this is very close to my heart. You said, how could you feel this way? I don't think that helps for me.
Okay. Yeah.
I don't think, how could you feel this way? It's like, I mean, for you with anxiety, it's like, how could you be anxious?
Right. Yeah.
Nothing's happening. Like what? You know, like that's like the worst thing you can say to someone that struggles with anxiety. Like just stop.
Yeah.
Or what?
I think what I was going for that is that you would be like amazed that you would even feel that way, but because like, oh, so people are even shocked that I'm feeling guilty. But that could make you feel guilty.
That could make me feel guilty. Exactly.
Guilt is so tricky.
It's so tricky. It's so tricky. And I think for me, I don't know what other people would say, but find your statement. My statement is, you're not judging me. That's all I actually need to hear is, are you judging me? Did I do this wrong? Is this my fault? And you need to be like, this is not your fault. And I'm not judging you of how you did this. You did the best you can. Like all those kind of statements. Even now I can have like a tier about it of like, find your statement of what you need to be replaced of the guilt. And I've really tried to work hard on this in my life. And it is that statement. Are you judging me? Best friend, are you judging me for how this happened or whatever? It's like, no. It's so funny too, because I feel like I have a lot of confidence in my life. Like I'm not someone that's like worried about what people think until I make a mistake. or like something big or something like that. Like I don't know. It's like this weird thing because even people that are confident, I feel like could still struggle with this, but they look like they're so confident. And I feel like I am like I don't feel like I walk around being like, everyone in this room thinks I'm terrible.
I think you're a very confident person.
Yeah. I'm trying to like decipher the two though. I'm trying to like say like, but I still like, I think it's a lot with us of just us and our relationship and stuff like that.
I think when we enter into a place where you feel guilty, that's the number one thing that you need to know. Are you judging me?
Yeah. Are you judging me?
And I think every person has something like that, you know?
Yeah.
Are you judging me? Do you think I did this well? And I think finding that is how we replace guilt with grace.
Yeah. 100%. But like, and I think for someone that struggles with this is just like finding your statement, because it really does instantly make you feel better. I mean, for me, I'm talking to for myself, it really does make me feel better. And I feel like everything else that I feel, like feeling sad, I can be told like, I love you, we're going to be through this together, but it sometimes doesn't instantly make me feel better. I just have to keep going and keep moving and keep going on. But really with guilt, I really feel like it really does. Like once you say what you're feeling and say how you're feeling guilty and you are met with grace and love, it really does make you feel better.
So I think it's as simple as that, finding your thing that confirms or denies what you're feeling toward yourself.
Yeah.
And replaces that guilt with grace.
Yeah. And I just want everyone to know, if you are feeling guilty and you have just been beating yourself up lately and you feel like you're doing it all wrong and you feel really guilty towards your body and bitter and just all those things. I remember I had a lot of guilt towards God, like all those things. I just want you to know that Jesse and Doug are not judging you.
Yes, that's right.
We are not judging you. You are safe here to experience this however you are experiencing this. You are not doing it wrong. Because sometimes I like what you said of like, being told to not feel guilty can almost make you feel more guilty.
Yeah.
And it's like, we're not judging you. No one is judging you. This is a safe place for you to experience this however you are experiencing it. If you are feeling guilty, just know that you are loved by us and we are not judging you for how you are doing this.
That's right. You might feel like nobody in the world gets you and that you feel like you're beating yourself up and other people are beating you up. But here at Uniquely Knitted on the Infertility Feelings podcast, you are welcome.
You are
just
welcome.
how you are, and we are not ever going to judge you for what you're doing or how you're doing it.
Or how you are experiencing this journey. We are not judging you. We love you. Thank you for listening to the Infertility Feelings podcast, a show produced by the nonprofit Uniquely Knitted. This is your place to process, cry, and laugh about infertility. We are so grateful to all of our wonderful donors who support this work. If you would like to learn more about how we serve the community and support the work of Uniquely Knitted, we encourage you to check us out at uniquelyknitted.org. If you enjoy this podcast and would like more people to hear it, please give us a rating and a comment in Apple Podcast. This is the best way for more people to hear these conversations. If you need to talk to someone about your feelings, please reach out to us. We are here to help you. If you would like to learn more about our unique process groups, please follow the link in our show notes.